For 70 years, the world followed a single, unspoken rule. If you wanted to see the absolute pinnacle of industrial perfection, you looked to Germany. It was more than just a country, it was the engine of Europe, a relentless machine fueled by precision engineering, a rock solid middle class, and an economy that seemed physically incapable of stalling. From the gleaming factory floors of Stuttgart to the chemical giants of the Rhine, the German model was the envy of the developed world. But as we move through 2026, that engine isn't just sputtering, it is being methodically dismantled. For the first time since the late 1990s, the dreaded term sick man of Europe has returned. But this time, there is no easy policy fix. Germany didn't just have a bad fiscal year, it made a civilizational bet that failed. It traded its long term energy security for cheap Russian gas, its technological lead for temporary Chinese market access, and its national defense for a seat at a geopolitical table that has now been flipped over. Today, we are witnessing one of the greatest transfers of industrial wealth and capacity in modern history. As German factories go dark and the Made in Germany label loses its luster, the lights are flickering on elsewhere, in Poland, in the United States, and in the mega factories of China. This isn't just a standard business cycle recession. This is the structural deindustrialization of a global superpower. To understand how the world's most stable economy ended up on the brink of a lost decade, we have to follow the money, expose the math they tried to hide, and look at the catastrophic miscalculations that brought the giant to its knees. To understand the collapse of 2026, you first have to understand the high that preceded it. Between 2017 and 2022, Germany was mainlining Russian energy like a drug. It was an addiction that powered the country's massive export surplus. At its peak, Germany was importing over $31 billion worth of Russian energy annually. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate strategy known as Wandel durch Handel, change through trade. The theory was that if Europe bought enough gas from Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin would be too financially invested in European stability to ever risk a conflict. It was a beautiful, expensive lie. While German politicians were busy cutting ribbons on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, Moscow was already preparing to weaponize the flow. By the summer of 2021, months before the invasion of Ukraine, Russia quietly stopped filling its gas storage units on German soil. They manufactured a shortage. The result was immediate. Wholesale electricity prices shot from 5 cents per kilowatt hour in May 2021 to 14 cents by October. The legendary German export miracle was revealed to be a cheap gas miracle. When the Nord Stream pipelines were sabotaged in late 2022, it shattered the entire foundation of the German business model. By early 2025, German energy imports from Russia had collapsed by a staggering 93%. The divorce was final, but Germany was the one who lost the house. While the government tries to spin a narrative of a green transition success, the reality is governed by a brutal mechanism known as the merit order trap. Germany's shift toward renewable energy, the Energiewende, looks great on paper. Wind and solar now account for nearly 60% of production. But in the European electricity market, the price of power is determined by the marginal cost of the very last unit of energy needed to meet demand. Think of it this way. If a baker buys 99 loaves of bread for 1 cent each, but the 100th loaf costs $10, he must pay $10 for every single loaf. Because Germany chose to phase out its zero-carbon nuclear fleet, the grid has no buffer. When the wind stops blowing, a phenomenon called Dunkelflaute, the grid must fire up expensive gas peaker plants. Instantly, the price for the entire nation spikes. In late 2024 and 2025, we saw prices hit 900 euros per megawatt hour. You cannot run a world-class chemical plant or a steel mill on energy prices that behave like a volatile speculative asset. If you can't predict your input costs 6 months from now, you don't build a new factory in Saxony. You build it in Texas or Poland. The middle stand, the small to medium family-owned companies that form the backbone of the German economy, isn't waiting for a rescue. They are leaving. In 2025, industrial electricity in Germany averaged 38 cents per kilowatt hour. In Poland, it was 18 cents. Average hourly labor costs in Germany sit at 42 euros. In Poland, they are 14. But for many, the trigger is the bureaucracy. In Poland, you can secure a permit for a factory in 6 months. In Germany, you are lucky to get a reply to an email in 18 months. Legacy icons like Miele, Knorr-Bremse, and Bosch have begun shifting production east. Poland is no longer just a neighbor. It is Germany's replacement. By the end of 2025, more than 20% of the German manufacturing sector was planning an exit. The engine of Europe hasn't stopped. It is simply being unbolted from the floor in Stuttgart and reinstalled in Łódź. If Russia lost the energy war, who won? Look across the Atlantic. By 2025, the United States supplied nearly 96% of all German LNG. This is a massive shift in global wealth. Russian pipeline gas was cheap and stable. American LNG is a global commodity. It must be frozen, shipped, and regasified. The delivered cost is 3 to 4 times higher. Between 2022 and 2025, Europe sent over 117 billion euros to the United States for gas. Every time a German citizen pays their heating bill, they are helping fund the American energy boom. The US didn't just save Europe, it became its landlord, locking in a permanent competitive advantage for American manufacturers who enjoy gas prices that are a fraction of what the Germans now pay. For over a century, the Mercedes Star and the VW Circle were symbols of global dominance. That era is over. In 2025, Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers didn't just enter the market, they began to dominate. According to innovation rankings, Geely and BYD have officially surpassed Volkswagen in key EV metrics. While German engineers spent decades perfecting the internal combustion engine, China cornered the battery supply chain. In 2025, BYD's sales in Germany surged by over 700%. The final blow came with the 2025 trade deal. To avoid exclusion from the North American market, Europe signed an agreement, cutting tariffs on American cars to zero, while German manufacturers still faced a 15% wall to sell in the US. As a result, over 75,000 high-paying German automotive jobs are projected to migrate to the United States by 2027. The auto nation is becoming an auto importer. Berlin's response is a 500 billion euro Hail Mary stimulus fund approved in March 2025. This fund bypasses the debt brake to fix crumbling rails and build a hydrogen economy. But money isn't the only problem. Demographics are. Germany is losing its most experienced workers. Over the next decade, 20 million people will retire, while only 12.5 million enter the workforce. You cannot build a high-tech future with a missing generation. The labor shortage is a hard limit on growth. Germany's decline is a warning. It proves that economic gravity still applies. It shows how quickly a superpower can fade when it forgets that energy is the master resource. You can have the best engineers, but if they can't afford to turn on the lights, they cannot build the future. The German model is dead. What emerges will be leaner, more digital, but far less influential. The engine of Europe has finally stalled, and the rest of the world is driving past.